Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of www.michaelgaddis.com. Before the break, I asked what percentage of San Diego County homes would you guess are still underwater? According to the Times of San Diego, nearly 10% of San Diego homes are still underwater. Now, according to this article, it says a news report Thursday from the online real estate service Zillow finds that almost 1 home in 10 in San Diego are still underwater. Now, what does underwater mean? Underwater means that your house is valued less than the outstanding mortgage balance. And this is 7 years after what they call the Great Recession. Zillow said 8.6% of San Diego area homes overall and 12.7% of condominiums remained underwater in the second quarter of this year. Though high, this was less than the national average of 15% of all homes and 20% of condos. So it's interesting because here's how California's metro areas ranked in the second quarter in terms of percentage of underwater homes. Riverside was 15.8%. Sacramento is 13%. San Diego, 8.6%. Los Angeles, 7.8%. San Francisco was 5.4%. And San Jose was 3.4%. So it's incredible that there's still such a large portion of people that are underwater. Now, a lot of the problem is that a lot of these underwater people, and people who are not necessarily underwater as well, start getting themselves into situations where they need assistance. Either they're having financial distress or they're just coming to terms with the fact that their house is so far underwater. So a lot of them, even in the inception of the housing crisis, a lot of them sought loan modifications for help. So early on in the infancy stages of loan modifications, the banks weren't prepared to handle this. I don't think they were ready for what was happening, or they underestimated the extent of the problem. So what happened is when the loan modifications began, and just to remind you, before the housing crisis, loan modifications were there, but they were only granted in special circumstances, usually in the cases of divorce, disaster, disability, death, things like that, the 4 Ds. And when they were granted, they were usually granted for either 6 months or 12 months at a time. They were never permanent type modifications. And the reason is because most people had equity. And when you have equity, what does a bank do? A bank has no incentive to help you if they can foreclose on you and get all of their investment back. So that's what loan modification comes down to. It comes down to incentive and benefit of the investor. That's part of the problem. So when this housing crisis initially started happening, the banks weren't prepared for this. So they didn't know how to prepare loan modifications for a problem of this magnitude. So what did they do? They put people, in a lot of them, in what I call Band-Aid modifications. They kind of just kicked the can down the curb. Basically, what they were doing is putting people in, interest-only loans for 5 years, or they put them into things that basically just put the problem off. And a lot of these things keep reoccurring. So the people who received loan modifications like in 2008 and 2009, well, if they were put into a 5-year interest-only kind of Band-Aid modification, as I say, then basically what happens is in 2013, 2014, what happened is usually these interest-only loans converted from interest-only loan modifications to fully amortized. So the initial, let's say the interest rate, for example, was, okay, we'll give you a 3% interest only for 5 years. And when a homeowner sees that, they say, well, that's great. That's really low payment. So they sign up, take it. What they didn't read is the next paragraph that says, at the expiration of 5 years, your loan is going to become a 5% interest rate, fully amortized with the remaining term. So what that means is if you've had your loan, let's say, let's say it's a 30-year loan and you've had it 8 years, that means at the expiration of the modification period, you're going to have 22 years left. So what that means is your payment is going to be calculated at 5% on 22 remaining years, which what? It means an increase in your payment, a substantial increase. So a lot of these people redefaulted off these loan mods. And, a lot of the banks are going, well, the redefault rate on these is really high. Well, yeah, it is, because you just gave them a Band-Aid modification. It didn't fix the problem. You just prolonged the problem. So the problem is that new loan modifications are very difficult to obtain. Part of the problem is rising values make the incentives to investors much lower than it used to be. In the old days, they were much more amenable to granting a loan modification because their risk of loss was higher. They were looking and assessing their situation and determining that ultimately it was in their financial best interest to give you, say, a 2% on a 40-year loan with a principal forbearance or something like that. However, with rising values, it makes the incentive to the investor much lower. So that is one problem. Another problem is that a lot of people are defaulting on good loan modifications, leaving less desirable loan mod programs available. So what happens is when these people have, let's say, a HAMP modification that's a step rate escalation, meaning it starts at, let's say, a 2% for 5 years, then goes up to 3%, then 4%, and then fixes at, let's say, 4.125. After the expiration of the 5 years, their payment's going up, and a lot of them can't afford it. And so, but the problem is the mod is a very aggressive mod, and because of the reason I just told you, and prior to this, with the rising values, it makes it much more difficult to get a loan mod. Plus, once you've already received one HAMP loan modification, you're not eligible for another HAMP Tier 1 modification. You're only eligible for HAMP Tier 2 or an investor-based modification, and HAMP Tier 2 is not nearly as aggressive as HAMP Tier 1. So unfortunately, a lot of times due to algorithm problems, you won't qualify for a HAMP Tier 2, which leaves you at the mercy of the investor-based mods, and a lot of time those in-house mods are not very good at all. So what does that mean? Well, that means a lot of homeowners need to make a decision. And the decision they need to make is, do they want to short sell or just kind of ride it out and let it go to foreclosure? So the question is, why short sell your house? Why would a homeowner decide to short sell their house? Well, there's several reasons for this. Number one, you preserve your credit and future ability to purchase a home. If you short sell, your ability to purchase a home is accelerated. Okay, versus, if you let it go to foreclosure. This is especially the case of VA buyers. So if anybody out there is a person who had owned a house and they short sold and they have VA eligibility, you're in good luck. You're definitely in good shape. The next reason is you can resolve junior recourse liens. So what that means is a lot of people have first liens and second liens. The first lien is because of the way the laws work. The first lien is usually it'll end up being a non-recourse loan because of the One Act rule in California, which basically says that a lien holder is restricted to either pursue a deficiency judgment or foreclosure. And since most of them pursue foreclosure, they lose their right to pursue deficiency judgments. So basically, that means they can't come after you for the shortfall. However, second liens who don't typically exercise their right of foreclosure can come after you in the event of a foreclosure to the first lien. So what do I mean by recourse lien? You might be asking. A recourse lien is basically where they can come after you personally. Versus, maybe a purchase money loan where where it's a non-recourse loan by law, which means if the loan you purchase your house with is called a purchase money loan, and that purchase money loan is protected. Whereas if you refinance out of it, it loses its purchase money protection and becomes technically a recourse loan. So a lot of people took out HELOCs and other things like that, and it created these recourse liens. Well, what a short sale will do was provide you an opportunity to negotiate out of that. So, if for example, you let the house go to foreclosure and you have a $200,000, second, the last thing you want is for the house to go to foreclosure and then 8, 9, 10 months later, somebody knocking on your door saying, we want $200,000. So the short selling will allow you an opportunity to help resolve that. And a lot of times it doesn't come out of any cost to you because what happens is, the first lien holder will usually grant the second lien holder an allocation in the short sale, and basically, the second lien holder will accept what the first lien holder is giving them and agree to short sell a property. And because of the anti-deficiency statutes in California, basically you're off the hook. So short selling your house can really be beneficial, especially if you have recourse junior liens. The other thing a short sale can do is it can help resolve issues with judgment creditors. A lot of times people who are in trouble have judgment liens on their house for various other things. A lot of time, short sale is an opportunity for you to try to resolve those as well. And another incentive for people to short sell is that basically you might qualify for some relocation assistance. Like, for example, HOFA will give up to $10,000 in relocation assistance to help people bridge themselves from their current residence to a new residence. And that HOFA incentive is really, really beneficial because, and it's good for both sides. The bank gives it because then, they know that the homeowner is basically going to take care of the house during the short sale process and they're committed to go. And the homeowner basically, gets money to help transition them to a new home. So you need to see if you can qualify for HOFA. There are certain restrictions on it, but it is something to definitely consider. So short sales are not easy, though. And the reason they're not easy is because you frequently come up with things like value disputes, where the bank is thinking that the house is worth more than what your offer is, and you have to go back and forth with the bank disputing the value of the property. Now, one lien short sales are easier but they're still difficult due to valuation disputes because the problem is that we're in an appreciating real estate market. And a lot of times, a lot of these lenders and servicers are adding in an appreciation factor of 3 to 5% on top of so whatever market value they're getting on their BPO, they're adding 3 to 5%, and they're trying to get that back, which creates difficulty when trying to negotiate a short sale. Another issue is difficulty in finding buyers. One, because of the stigma of a short sale, and two, because of the deferred maintenance. Buying a short sale takes time. A lot of buyers don't want to stick around the amount of time it takes to get a short sale. And so they're not going to pay, full market price to stick around for 2 to 3 months to do it. And with the amount of deferred maintenance that a lot of these have, because most of these people are so far behind, they quit putting money into their house. So, it's definitely a problem trying to secure a buyer that's going to stick it through the process. Another issue is appreciating values affect the net that banks want. As you said, the banks are all about the net proceeds to them. So as values increase, the net proceeds are an issue. Junior lien holders must agree to the sale. Let me tell you something. Negotiating a short sale with multiple lien holders is like herding cats. You got to get them all in a row. You got to make them all march in a single file row. And if you've ever seen kittens or cats, it's almost impossible to get them to do that. So it is a very difficult endeavor to try to get everybody on board to agree to get everything what needs to be done. And then if you have junior creditors or HOA liens, it makes it even more difficult. And short selling non-owner occupied homes becomes an issue as well. And the last problem that really makes short sales difficult is that every single person in the transaction seems to have their own agenda that seems to shift from day to day. So it's really, really difficult to get everybody on board. And it takes a very experienced short sale negotiator to help you get through this process. So who do you choose? Well, honestly, you need to choose somebody like me who has a background, in helping homeowners with distress situations. Many real estate professionals will call themselves short sale experts, but you know what it takes to be a short sale expert? Vistaprint. You just go to Vistaprint and you tell them you're a short sale expert, and they'll print the card out, and there you go. The problem is that short sales can be stressful. Lenders are getting tougher. You have to fight these values and ancillary issues. And, it's like 10 times the amount of work as a regular listing. 10 times. Equity sales are a piece of cake compared to short sales. Here's the deal. Lenders pay my commission. So if you hire someone like me, you basically get my services for free, which is a great deal. But the goal is to transition you. Ultimately, the goal is to transition you as a homeowner from a very bad situation to a new situation and set you up for the future so that you can get back into the house as soon as possible. That's what I try to do with every single one of my clients. I try to transition them so that they're able to buy a house in the future. So when we get back from the break, we are going to visit what was once known, and maybe still is, the avocado capital of the world. You are listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
This is AM 1170, The Answer.